Are you ready to turn your investments into retirement income? Listen in as Jeremy Keil and his guests reveal ways you can make smarter retirement, investment, and tax planning decisions to achieve your ideal retirement. You will learn more about your money so you can feel better about your money and make better money decisions. Now, on to the show.
Welcome to Retirement Revealed. I'm Jeremy Keil, and we're here to turn your retirement savings into a consistent income. And today we're talking with Bruce Fear about thriving in retirement. Who wouldn't want to thrive in retirement? And Bruce and I are connected through LinkedIn, but through a common company that we're associated with or had been associated with. And just so happy. I've heard great things about Bruce. I'm excited to have you on the show. Bruce, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jeremy. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, and of course, I teased a little bit that we're connected to a company in the past here. It's Thrivent Financial. Tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe your career with Thrivent.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I was with Thrivent for almost a little over 30 years, in the financial services, almost 40 years. But I actually started as a rep in Northwest Iowa, doing wealth advisory for Thrivent, and worked through different roles. I think I had 13 or 14 different roles at Thrivent, half at corporate and half in the field. So I was in senior leadership for a couple decades, and then I was working in the field in sales management for a couple decades, and started two companies of my own, and went into retirement, or what we call renewalment, 4.5 years ago.
Yeah, that's awesome. You're a man of many hats.
Yeah.
Yeah,
maybe
awesome.
master of none. We'll see.
That's okay. Well, why not? Well, you've got enough ability to write a book, and it's about kind of your journey and what you've shared or learned in your journey. And you mentioned there you aren't quite calling it retirement. You're calling it renewalment, and that's the name of your book, Renewalment, Thriving in Retirement, Building on a Rock-Solid Foundation of Biblical Principles. That title right there, we've got so many things to go with. But let's just start with the first word, renewalment. What does that mean to you?
When thinking about retirement for myself, it just seemed like I really didn't want to retire to something. You know, it felt like I would be tired, and started researching retirement. And really, a lot of people did that, just kind of retired because they were tired. And that for my wife and I, when we were looking at it, renewalment is really about a renewing, a refocusing, and a repurposing of this life phase. So I think renewalment can happen at any life phase. It just happens to be focused on retirement in this book. I think we can renew, repurpose, and refocus at any stage of our life. And that's what we've been doing for the last 4.5 years.
That's awesome. And I feel as if, I'm not going to use the word easier, but I feel like whenever there's a trigger, it just gives more of an opportunity for somebody to have that renewalment, whatever that might look like. Tell us, how's that looking for you?
Yeah, we, I think I mentioned this once before, but I love to work. I grew up in the Midwest. I was all about work ethic. I figured I'd work till at least 70, if not longer, just because that's what people do. But we actually retired when I was 59, 4.5 years ago. And to your point, kind of the triggering event was a couple of my mentors really just challenged me on, Bruce, when is enough enough? And what's it really mean to retire, and what's your focus? And that's when I started looking at retirement from a biblical perspective, and not just from a worldview perspective, but trying to look at it through the lens of the Bible, and really using some processes to discern when enough is enough. And when I say that, most people think only of money. Money obviously plays a role, right? But it's also about time, and about kind of my own ego and my own prestige, and what do I get out of this job I had at Thrivent, which I loved, quite frankly, doing, yet it was more about me, and came to this feeling enough was enough and we needed to refocus.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning ego, prestige. I'll tell you, you've got a great name in the world of Thrivent. And so, which is a positive thing. And we hear from retirement coaches all the time that a lot of times when you are working, your self-worth gets wrapped up in your ability to have an influence at work. And I imagine that maybe, it happened for you. I guess I'm curious, how does it look and how does it feel then to maybe be a bit on the other side of it, where perhaps you're not necessarily, I'm gonna say the top dog, right? You're not necessarily the big cheese.
Yeah, that's a great question, because I was just talking about this Monday night with some friends, in that, one of the changes in refocusing and repurposing is that you really need to move what you're doing, even if you were doing really good things. And I felt like I was doing real good things, making a difference, helping people out. But in hindsight, it was about me. I was doing good things, but I felt good about it, right? Versus flipping that and saying, what's an other-centered person's perspective? And it's not about me, it is about other people. And you have ups and downs afterwards when you do that, because when you're the boss, you know, you do or don't have influence, but people kind of do what you want them to do, right?
Yeah.
But it's been a great growth experience, emotionally, spiritually, all kind relationally, with really saying, I need to step back and look at this from a different lens. And the world gives us so many views that end up, not good, that could I take a biblical lens and look at this and come out for the better on the other end, which 4.5 years later, I feel like we've done. And we've experienced probably every up and down people go through in retirement. It's just that I think ours haven't been as high or as low, because we have that steady factor in there.
Yeah, and that's that steady factor, I think, is the rock solid foundation, right?
Yep.
If you're grounded in something, you've got an ability to meet more challenges, I guess, with a greater sense of purpose, a sense of purpose that's outside of yourself, because you're mentioning maybe as much as you're a helper and a creator at work, you do get a boost from that prestige, which is okay. But like you said, it's you've understood it and felt the ability to go through, and I love these words: refocus, repurpose, renewal. Much better words than retirement.
Yeah.
And I don't think I've heard that before, where a lot of people retire because they're tired. But as soon as you said it, I see that all the time. So many people they're just sick of this job. Yeah. They don't want to drive into the work anymore. They don't want to do that anymore. And they're leaving because they're tired, as opposed to having another thing. You hear retire to something all the time. And maybe you retire because you are tired, but that just gives you the opportunity to refocus, repurpose, renew, and all there. I think what I'm gonna do here is, looking at the title of your book, I'm just gonna go left to right, because we talked a bit about renewalment, that this retirement time is a chance to renew. But you say next, thriving in retirement. What does thriving in retirement look for you personally right now?
Yeah, great question. I really reflect on John 10:10, where Jesus said he came to give us life, and to give us life in the full. And when I started researching people in retirement, I saw a lot of disillusioned people, a lot of even upset people, a lot of people losing purpose and identity, and really becoming a lesser part of themselves. And from my perspective, when you retire, whatever age you choose to retire at, if it's full retirement, part retirement, pay, not pay, to me, that's a little irrelevant. It's retiring into, not running from something, but really retiring or renewing to something. And retirement years or phase should be our best years of our life. Now, yes, our bodies start to deteriorate some, and we have some aches and all that stuff, right? Yet, just think of all the experiences, no matter who you are or what you've done, all the life experiences that you have. Just think of all the ups and downs and learnings that you've had. There's so much you can do to be other-centered. And, the Bible is kind of paradoxical. It's countercultural. And one of the things that we've really experienced ourselves and seen in a lot of other people is when you do become other-centered, the reality is that you're obviously other-centered and you're helping people for their reasons. And the outcome of that is you find way more personal joy, peace, purpose, and contentment than when you try to make it about you. And so to me, that's really thriving in the sense that it's not about me, it is other-centered. Yet at the same time, God's created that process. So I'm thriving in the moment too. And I'm finding more joy and contentment.
Yeah, and you're talking about other centered, other focused. That's part of what you're doing now, because you're working as a life coach. You've got your own coaching consultancy. You're helping people. I like how you said most of us have settled for living a less than full life. I see now from you sharing that passage from John 10:10 where you get that from, and where there is a purpose of living life in the full or to the fullest that you're designed to be, and you don't have to be 60 or 20 or 80 to say now's my time. You can be any of those times. So I'm assuming as you're life coaching, you're not just talking to other 63-year-olds. You're helping people throughout the spectrum.
Yeah, perfect point. Yeah, I have people in almost each of the decades that I'm working with, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. And, they're all in different life stages, yet in some ways they're all looking to live that same full life, and they're really looking to clarify their identity and their purpose, and really how do they live life to the fullest. And that's what we really talk about, is living life to the fullest through the lens from a biblical foundation and through the lens of people's priorities, because we all have different priorities, right? We're all unique. We're all made very uniquely. And so the way we're going to apply those is different, and our priorities to some extent are going to be different. But if we don't live through the lens of those priorities, somebody else fills our day up for us.
Yeah, that's right on. And you also say in there, I want to get your best quotes out there for people, which is pause and be intentional. And of course, retirement is just a forced pause, or even if you chose it, it's kind of a forced pause. Yeah. How can somebody, I guess, plan for a pause or just create a pause if they're not in a transition point that's kind of external? How do they create this internal pausing point?
Great point. Because without taking a pause, and I call it building some margin, it's really tough to enjoy the rest of life because we don't take the time to think about it. And there's a realization about being intentional about it, is because our habits win. Habits always win out over good intentions. They always win out over goals. Habits win. And I don't know about you, but I have some not great habits, sometimes, and they'll lead me astray. And if I'm not intentional about where I want to be going, those habits just lead me. I don't know about you, but I've actually been saying I'm not going to do something while I'm actually doing it.
Yeah.
And it's just a habit that's literally etched in our brain. And unless we take that pause and be intentional about our direction, the habit wins. Now, how do we take that pause is the challenge, right? Because people I don't have time. If we needed more time, God would have given us more hours in the day and more days in the week. There is time. It's, are we going to prioritize that time or not, right? Instead of spending, whatever your thing is, if it's spending too much time on TV or too much time on social media or whatever, right? Just say, I'm going to take 10 minutes or start with 5 and grow to 30 and say, I'm going to take a pause and I'm going to ask them these questions about what is really going right with my life, what's going wrong, what's missing, what am I just totally confused about? And start building that direction towards living that full life, because it means a little bit different for all of us.
It's Jeremy Keil here, and I know you're listening to the Retirement Revealed podcast because you want to learn more about making great retirement decisions. I've created a free video course for you to do just that. head over to 5stepretirementplan.com and sign up to receive this video training right in your email inbox. We broke down our 5-step retirement plan into bite-sized videos so you can get started on the retirement, investment, and tax planning you need to create a consistent retirement income. Go to 5stepretirementplan.com, use the number or spell it out. You'll get there either way. 5stepretirementplan.com. Thanks for listening, and now for the rest of the show. Right. I was reading that if you're trying to create a new habit, you need to kind of pair it with an existing habit or some sort of trigger. So if your habit is, I'm going to pause and think about my life for 5 minutes, or I'm going to journal for 5 minutes a day, you might be drinking coffee for 5 minutes a day. So maybe just don't add something new. Say, I'm going to do this habit while I do the other habit.
Absolutely.
Now, of course, if you're trying to quit smoking, maybe don't do that while you're smoking,
Yeah.
but I suppose maybe if that's what it takes, if you got to read the quit smoking manual on your last cigarette, then maybe that's what it is. But that's the idea is you already have habits. They're so powerful. Instead of adding in a new one to take up more time, try to pair it with an existing habit.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then you have a cue that you're aware of, right?
Right. Yeah. It's like the Pavlov's dog thing, right? If coffee is your little bell that gets you hungry for your new habit, then fine, go for it, right?
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, you've definitely taught us about the why, the what, the how for thriving in retirement. That's a big piece of your book too. But the final piece, which is about half your title, which shows the importance of it, is the rock solid foundation of biblical principles. And you said earlier that you're reading what the Bible had to say about retirement. And I might have missed that part. Tell me about what the Bible says about retirement, because in my mind and remembering, there's not too many retired people around in the Bible or around 2,000 or 4,000 years ago. Tell me about that.
You're exactly right, because the concept of our retirement as the world views it today is a relatively new concept, and our worldview of retirement is this retired to a life of self-centered leisure, I call it, right? Mm-hmm. And in the Bible, that concept of retirement is only mentioned once and very briefly. In the book of Numbers, it talks about Levitical priests, that you should be a Levitical, if you're a Levite and you're a priest, you do that from the age of 20 to the age of 50. And at the age of 50, you retire from that. But you got to read the rest of it, because from there it says you retire from that so that you can serve the others and allow room for the young priest to come in.
Got it.
So that's the only time it's kind of literally mentioned in the Bible. So what I attempted to do is look at some things that impact retirement and our view of retirement. So the book looks at the biblical view of work. Mm-hmm. Work is good. Work is real good. It's when we do too much of it that becomes the problem, right? There's a biblical view of life of leisure and laziness, a biblical view of a Christian lifestyle. While it doesn't use the word Christian lifestyle, 1 Timothy really talks about a life of provision and contentment and enjoyment, that as Christians, we are to live in provision, contentment, and enjoyment. It doesn't mean we can't be joyful, right? And it looks at what I would call 5 wise financial principles. I think it's really hard to enjoy retirement, renewalment, unless you develop a healthy relationship with money. Because money is always going to be there. It's part of our life. And the Bible talks about it. It has over 2,300 verses on it. Roughly half of the parables are on money and possession. So somebody knew it was going to be an issue, right? And so it's really important to work with somebody to understand. To me, from my point of view, work with a Christian financial advisor to really understand what those principles are. They're real simple. They're not necessarily always easy, right?
Right.
And then, as we mentioned, the view of retirement, but just how does this all fit into renewing? Because in John 15:12, where Jesus says, this is my commandment, you are to love others as I have loved you. That's really the calling for us in retirement, which is that how do we go out and love on other people? How do we be other-centered and serve other people? We're really serving God through helping other people, serving other people. And that doesn't mean we can't have fun. That doesn't mean we shouldn't enjoy it, because we should really enjoy it. It's just that I like golf. Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
Nothing wrong with that.
I was Monday morning, I was out golfing. I plan to go golfing a little bit later today. I like to golf, but that can't be the core of my purpose in Renewalment, right? My core is around really how do I help others? What's my vocation? Am I available and present for family? Am I maturing as a follower of Jesus? Am I doing those things? And yes, have fun, go on vacations, go on trips, play golf, whatever your thing is, go to the top of the mountains. Just don't make that the core of your existence.
Yeah, and I think one reason why people view retirement as that self-centered life of leisure, you call it, is that they're focusing so much. They feel like I've got to work now so I can enjoy it later. You mentioned 1 Timothy talks about provision, contentment, and enjoyment. I got a feeling that's all together, maybe at one time or as close as possible to it. It's not provision first, then contentment, then enjoyment. But I feel like it's how people, I guess the world looks at it, is go work on yourself and your family's finances first. Eventually you'll feel good enough about that, and then you can go out and have some fun. And that's just clearly not the way to do it.
Yeah. That's a great point, because I do think that is the worldview, is that they come in that order. And, there's been studies that have been done that ask people, how much more do you need? And it didn't matter if they had millions of dollars already or not. The answer was 25% more, right?
I knew where you were going. I seen that study.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
And so it's real hard to get, unless you try to do them together. If you keep them compartmentalized, it's really hard ever to get out of the provision mode.
Yeah.
To find contentment and enjoyment. And you're so right that it's supposed to be lived together no matter what your age is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Good. Well, I got one more question for you, Bruce. And
sure.
Before we do that, I'd love to have you just share with everyone, how do we get a hold of you? How do we read your book, find your book? How do we do that?
Yep. You can just go to Amazon or barnesandnoble.com or any of the other sellers, or the publisher who did my book is called Zulon Press, Zulon. You can go directly to their bookstore. It's a little better price there, or you can just go to Amazon. I always find that easy myself. And you can just search Renewalment in Amazon, and Renewalment Thriving in Retirement. It'll pop up in there. So you can have it shipped to you, or you can do an ebook, either one, right there on Amazon. And you can reach, my brucefear7@gmail.com is easy Gmail to get to. It's just one word, no periods, brucefear@gmail.com.
Great.
And I'd be happy to answer anybody's questions or thoughts or opinions on anything. So,
well, that's great. Apparently, there's at least 6 other Bruce Fears out there, but you're the first one on our podcast.
Yeah, there we go. 7's kind of a complete whole number, right?
That is very true. Yep, you've read your Bible for sure, definitely. Well, awesome, and of course too, if you want to get a copy of that book, I'm going to give out for the first 3 people that email me, it's podcast@keilfp.com, KEILFP.com. Just email me and say you want a copy of Bruce's book. We'll send that out to the first 3 people. So definitely do that, or go to Amazon, and we'll have links to that. And of course, if you want to learn more about what we're doing, you can check us out at 5stepretirement.com. All right, we got one final question for you, Bruce. What is something people don't know about you? And remember, this is a clean rated podcast.
What is something people don't know about me? That's a great question, because I'm a pretty transparent book. But I think something most people would not know about me, especially now with my career and everything, is I grew up thinking I was going to be a pig farmer.
All right.
I didn't grow up on a farm. I grew up in a rural community, but I really thought I was going to be a pig farmer. And then after that, reality collapsed. I was for sure I was going to be a carpenter, which is how I put myself through college. But I never worked as a carpenter after college. So.
Hey, that's right. You got more skills than I do, and that's great. I'm wondering, have you ever traded pork bellies? Was that your
No, but that was one of my job offers when I graduated college.
Okay,
Actually,
gotcha.
I really thought I was going to do that in the commodity industry. Instead, I became a financial advisor.
That's right. The pigs were calling, but you answered another call.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that, Bruce. Thanks for coming on. Tell us about your book. We're going to have a link to that in the show notes. Again, it's Renewalment, Thriving in Retirement, Building on a Rock-Solid Foundation of Biblical Principles. Thanks for coming on, Bruce.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You got it. And thank you for listening to the Retirement Revealed podcast. We believe if you know more about your money, you will feel better about your money, and you will make better money decisions.
Thank you for listening to the Retirement Revealed podcast. Click on the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. Visit retirement-revealed.com to learn more. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Keil Financial Partners. Keil Financial Partners does not provide legal, accounting, or tax advice. Consult your attorney or tax professional. Representatives have general knowledge of the Social Security tenets. For complete details on your situation, contact the Social Security Administration. Keil Financial Partners is a part of the Thrivent Advisor Network, a registered investment advisor. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning.